Culture, Youth and Sports. Melissa Gumbs is in the building. Good morning, Minister. How you doing?
Morning. I'm good.
Good to see you here.
Pleasant week to everybody.
Yeah, how was the weekend?
It was actually pretty quiet. I have to say I didn't do much. I trying to save my energy for Carnival.
Okay.
Because every time I look at the schedule, I think, wow, we might be in problems.
Yeah, 3 weeks. 3 weeks of non-stop fun.
Yeah, every time I Love Lugs puts up 9 Thursdays left, 8 Thursdays, I'm like, stop it.
Right?
Please. Like,
speaking about culture, I don't know if you checked out the parade yesterday from the Dominican Republic.
No. I saw, video footage of those who were there, but I did not.
There was a lot of beautiful and bonita culture. I'll just let you know that.
I'm sure it was the culture you were admiring.
Shout out to MP Sarah Westcott. She was there also in full costume.
Okay.
Tia Sarafina.
Yeah.
She was there.
Tia Sarafina.
So there you go. Okay, so Minister, welcome once again to the show. There's some very, very serious stuff that we have to talk about. And let's get into it. So I believe last week you were in Parliament.
Yes.
And you let them know about some information that was pretty damning, if you want to use those words. And it's something that you've been talking about even way before you got into politics.
Yeah.
It's
literacy, and it's the ability, of our country to basically move forward and to make sure that our citizens are not just that they can read, but that they can comprehend what they read and that they're literate in a sense that they're not able to be taken advantage of. And I think that's something that persons don't really think about. And, I was in Parliament to present the EGRA and EGMA results. That's the early grade reading and early grade mathematics assessments. And that is done at Group 3 and a Group 5 level.
Okay.
So Group 3 is first grade, for those who don't know, and Group 5 is then third grade.
Right.
And essentially what the assessment revealed, so the 2023 assessment was already pretty upsetting. That was just Group 3. Last year we included Group 5 because that is then the Group 3 of 2023.
Okay, to see if things at least improved.
To see if things had improved. And while you have slight improvements, it's not to where you would want to, comfortably say, well, we're doing all right and we're on the right path.
Right.
So for me, it was more about trying to show that to the public and to Parliament. The council. That was like the 8th time I've seen that presentation. The 8th time I've been in it. The 8th time I've done it, and each time it is more upsetting. To see where we are at. And I think a good thing for the public to know is that we have not really done many assessments of our education system. I spent 4 years in Parliament asking my predecessor to, are you going to review this? What is the country's literacy rate? Are you going to review FBE, for example? And even that only happened last year for the first time since it was rolled out in 2004. And I think that's important to note because without data, you can't make good decisions. And, a lot of the outcry from last week has been, we need urgent solution. No, I think urgency needs to be present, yes, but it doesn't mean rush whatever you do, because we tend to do that here a lot where it's I call it shortcut governance, where you see what maybe you throw like something at a wall, and if it sticks, but what sticks at a wall eventually will roll down. And I think for me, it's more about, in this capacity now, working with the ministry, working with all stakeholders to kind of see how, what can we throw that sticks and stays stuck.
Right.
Because you don't want to do patchwork solutions and then you end up here in another 10 to 15 years. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so once the results are known and everybody is pretty upset. Some people are surprised. Some people are like, listen, we've been knowing this for years. Like you said, this is not the first time that this information came out. But now a lot of people are asking, so what's the next step? What do we do? Because it's like I said, it's crazy. It's scary at the same time because you don't expect this. You see the kids, they're in school, sometimes even for longer periods. There's after school activities. You give them an iPad or something and they could work that for you like nothing, anything technology. But when it comes to the actual fundamentals of, simple mathematics, and when it comes to reading, not only just reading, being able to read the words, but the comprehension behind that reading as well.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So what's the next solution? What do we do?
Next is we've already presented this to school boards, as I mentioned, to school boards, school managers, and the teachers from these groups and the student care teams at the schools. So this includes public and subsidized. And from here, now that Parliament is aware, the public is aware, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to first have those discussions and presentations with the actual persons that are on the ground working in these systems.
Right.
And then the Council of Ministers received a presentation as well, and now Parliament. And from there, we have to have a very real conversation with ourselves about who plays what role in making sure that these are not the 2027 results. Ultimately, the ministry and any minister can put in place the policies, the plans, the projects, but it is for the people working with them and in them to execute properly. Okay. It's also for parents to take their role seriously. I think I was trying to pull it up, there was a student questionnaire that, they were asked, like, do you observe your parents reading at home? How many books are there in your house? And one of the questions was, does someone read stories to you at home? And 43% of the respondents said never.
Okay.
That's close to half. I can't imagine. I mean, as somebody who, either my father was reading a newspaper or my mother was reading a book. To me and my sister, before bedtime, at all times, I think I was the 7-year-old that could say what was on the front page of at the time of The Guardian, But I think that's important to note that plays a heavy role in how these results come out. And it also begs the further question of maybe parents themselves cannot read to their children. So adult literacy now also has to take a bit of a step to the forefront. And there are great programs in the community that focus on improving adult literacy. And you have quite a few who are what you would call functionally illiterate. Maybe they can read, but they cannot comprehend, as you say. They cannot put things into action. They cannot recognize certain letters. And I think it's also to do away with the stigma of that. Because that I think is what keeps a lot of adults back from improving their reading ability, their literacy. But then that will just trickle down to kids. Persons have said to me since the results, since Parliament, I don't know why anybody would expect any different. We've had persons in our highest bodies of government that could barely read aloud. That could, not speak or form sentences like to get across a message properly. So I think all of that is what you see here represented in these results. And I think it takes more than me, it takes more than the ministry, and it will take all of us, teachers, parents, those who are not parents, just adults in general, lending a hand to improving this.
How do we get adults, especially the adults, to say, okay, you know what, let me take the responsibility and do what needs to be done so I could get these skills, so I could start reading and start learning? Because it's, for a lot of them, it's an embarrassing, situation for them to even admit that I can't read. I think it's about showing them what you're missing out on by not being able to read properly and to comprehend what you're reading. Because it's beyond being able to write a letter or just enjoy a nice novel or so. It's how do you read a prescription bottle? How do you understand what's on the prescription bottle? How do you read letters that you may get from tax office or from government itself or for your job? How do you understand the contract that you're being asked to sign? How do you understand your pay slip? Like, everything kind of ties in, and you're at a disadvantage if you're unable to read. And I think, like I said, the programs that I've been to some of the events in the community, they do destigmatize it a lot. They show you there is no shame in that. At the end of the day, an adult not being able to read means somewhere along the chain they were failed. And where did the failure start? Probably right where this is, in grade 1, in grade 3, at home, where you should be able to at least get the fundamentals down before you go further in your academic career. And this thing too of, persons tell me, but people graduate high school and such, and not everybody graduates the same.
if you look at CXC, a 4 is a pass.
Yeah.
Is it a good pass? No.
No.
But it's a pass. And I think that too is something that has to be, there has to be we have to strive towards excellence in everything. And the fundamentals should be the first place that people are excellent in.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to station with the Attitude Super Duper Morning Show. We have the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Melissa Gumbs, here with us, discussing the latest reports on the, what is it, the EGR?
The EGRA, EGMA.
EGRA.
Early grade reading and early grade mathematics assessment.
Yes, assessment. So besides that, I know within the ministry, there's lots of other things that you're working on. I'm not sure how much of that you'll be able to execute, because we just heard that the Minister of Finance was also talking about last week that when it comes to finances, it's very low.
Yeah.
It's very low. And things might be... tighten up the belts might have to happen across the board, because money has to go to certain places and certain things. And now she's asking the ministries themselves, how are you guys going to also generate money within your ministry to at least help with the coffers? So what is your ministry doing now to work on that? Because I know...
I think it's about creativity as well, you know. So many things in education could be done for free. There are resources to help literacy development that you could just download. You know, I think teachers are the one profession where you see a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation. I have friends that are teachers in the US, friends that are teachers in the Netherlands, family members that are teachers and have been teachers, and it's really for them. They share, and you do have a few here that do, you know, act in that good faith. They share with each other best practices. They share materials and so forth. So I think it's about finding creative ways, because on the one hand, you know, you can throw a bag of money at something, but if there's no proper plan to you know, deploy it and spend it properly, then you've actually wasted a lot of time and a lot of resources. For myself, one of the things that we had started last year that is coming back this year, and I just want to mention that as well, is the Dame Ruby Butte National Short Story Contest. I think developing that creativity in kids, encouraging it, is a way to also improve their literacy. You know, when kids write stories and become storytellers, you know, it is up to us as adults to go over it with them and say, well, this is what you could have said, this is what you could have done, a comma needed to be here, you know, this should have been written this way, should have been spelled that way. And I think that is one of you have to make it cool, basically. Yeah. That's the reality. As you said, you know, technology right now, it's definitely playing a role. I wouldn't say that it is the only reason why children don't have a grasp on the fundamentals, because one of the questions as well was, do you use technology to learn? The majority said no. They don't use any learning apps or anything like that. So it's really about how you use the technology, the time frame, everything in moderation. So I think between that, the short story contest, and just getting that message out there that reading is cool, that it's not, you know, it can be fun, but it's also necessary. I think that is what we're trying to focus on. And additionally, the Yoda Guy Museum is also going to be doing something where I think he's blending a bit of art and also comic writing. And I think too, for parents, you know, that is a way to show kids that reading is cool. A lot of times parents are like, oh, you can't read these comics, they rot your brain. Comics have some of the best writing that you'll encounter anywhere. And you have graphic novels now for young people who may like comics, but maybe you don't want them to read Batman or whatever. But there are graphic novels that have that comic book style, and the word usage, the scripting is just as high end. I think I've talked about the first Cat in Space ate pizza, which is a graphic novel that I read to then Mac Group 6A. But while reading the book, I was like, these words are a little advanced for these little 9-year-olds, you know, but they understood them. And I think that too is something that we need to also encourage. Like, just because someone is 7 doesn't mean they shouldn't try a book meant for 9-year-olds. That was always, you know, you remember my struggle with the library bookmobile. Shout out to that dude who stopped me from reading the books on the top shelf. But
Melissa was always the one that would keep everybody. She was the first one in, last one out of the bus. Like, listen, we gotta go.
I wanted to get the books on the top shelf, man. And there was constantly the argument of, no, that's ahead of your grade age. No, give me the opportunity to show you that I can read this book. You know, so I think that's also part of it. Just if you see that you have a reader on your hands, just throw books at them that they might not might not be in their age range. It's not like you're asking them to read, Jackie Collins. You just give them a little Hardy Boys book, and let them run with it.
Yeah. Now, funny enough, I saw, the People's Tribune, they put out every weekend this AI comic thing that they put out, discussing what was discussed during the week in a humorous yet serious kind of way. And one of them, I think, was, students are not only asking for, the literacy weeks and the science fairs and everything, but they also want different things for them to do, like sports and arts and everything. I know this is also part of your ministry. What are some things that you are doing to encourage, the community and the students when it comes to sports, when it comes to arts and everything? I know you guys have been working together with NSI, the Department of Sports. You did the whole thing with the with the signs up but I know that there could be much more done. There
could be much more done, and it goes back to that discussion about budget and about the reality that I think a lot of persons are unaware of the financial reality facing most ministries, but in particular education. Historically, it has been a budget that is cut. It's usually the first place people cut. I've said before that it's a return. It's an investment that you don't see the return right away.
Yeah.
So you think, they could do without. But further to that, you have your budget, which is fine. It's a nice wish, but what about cash flow? That's also a part of it. And a lot of these things do take substantial investment. I remember once when I was at college, they did a kind of overview of the most expensive sports to play. And you have certain sports like basketball, you need yourself a good pair of shoes, maybe a meniscus tie or two for those with knee issues. And essentially you're good, but if you look at like a baseball, a football, rugby, those are sports that require significant investment in equipment and everything like that. And that is something that I've always encouraged organizations to also find ways to raise their own funds. I've also encouraged, pooling resources because it's pretty rough, I think, the fiscal reality of the country. And we can say that we want to, see this or see that, but it until we have the funding for it. And I'm, not to say that this is a sort of excuse or so, like internally we are discussing how we can find funding for these types of initiatives that maybe does not rely on just government funding, but that does not happen overnight.
Right.
There's regulations you have to comply with. So that is something that is being worked on, and we hope to be able to share more about that later this year.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about also encouraging participation. What I see is that you have some sports that have very high levels of participation from students, but also for parents. I mean, encourage your kid to get into a sport. Even if it's track and field, they're doing amazing things in track and field. Shout out to Abdul and them. Netball is also a sport that has really taken over and dominated, even to the point where it's kind of killed women's basketball.
Yeah, I saw
because
that.
all the girls are in netball, so there's no girls basketball.
Even
really.
over this weekend, padel. I started getting into that. We're not playing, but I saw it. I was like, okay, this looks interesting.
Yeah, I haven't played it as yet. They keep trying to get me to come out, but I don't know. My ankles are not what they used to be, guys. So there's that. But yeah, so I think it's also about parents encouraging their kids, supporting them, taking them to practice, or having them carpool to go to practice. And what you'll see is that once you show that initiative, and NSI does a great job at the grassroots level of encouraging participation in sports, a healthier St.Maarten. You have the walks there on the Raoul Ridge track. I think as they continue to do that and we continue to also push that message of get involved, you're going to see that come out. What I know that the first meeting of Youth Cabinet is more about the spaces. That is what they were discussing. Spaces for, to even engage in these activities. You want to engage in culture, in art and such, you have to have the space to do it.
Right.
And, one of their complaints was that in town you don't really see it right there, readily for you. So that's something, and then I think that's also where private sector has a role to play.
Yeah.
That you have some benevolent commercial unit owner that decides I want to give this space not for $10,000 a month, but for something that is affordable, that then young people can use it to create and to express themselves.
Now, besides the community coming out and private businesses supporting, have you ever reached out to, let's say, our counterparts in the Netherlands, requesting some type of funding that can go towards our education education, our culture, arts, and the sports? Because I know we there's a lot of funding that we get when it comes to slavery and other aspects. But have you reached out to them saying, listen, this is a dire situation right now, and I think we need to focus on this, at least just for your ministry, instead of just a lump sum that goes and gets,
The reality, I was going to say unfortunate, but it's depends on how you look at it. The reality is we chose to be responsible for these things. Mm-hmm. We opted for a status that means we are responsible for them. We do get funding for certain things in education. For example, the CAFE program at USM, the Caribbean Academic Foundational Year, that is funded by the Strategic Education Alliance, which is a result of the Vierlande Overleg. So the government of the Netherlands provides that funding for that specific program. There are options to ask for funding for specific projects, but in terms of something structural, ultimately that is our responsibility. And that's why I talk about the reality of cash flow and how, you need that, whether it's payments to on your road tax, your sticker, whatever it is, all of that goes into the sports you want to see, the culture you want to see, and the education programs that you want to see. And until, everybody understands that and gets on board with that, I think you're going to be in this this perpetual cycle because we chose for this. We chose to be responsible for these things. You cannot now run back and say, I need you to structurally fund these cultural programs. There is funding available for organizations, and I always encourage them to write your project, submit it. You see that we did actually get the most projects approved for a separate, that is not the fund that the ministry gets, that particular slavery remembrance fund, that is a separate fund. And so I'm very proud that St.Maarten organizations did so well that we got the most approved out of any of the countries in the kingdom. And I think it's just about encouraging them to continue going after that. It is a lot of work. Writing grants is never easy, but I think it is also a testament to the capacity building that was done, by Foreseen, by Empower and such afterwards, after EGRA, to get us to this point where organizations can win these fund bids. But in terms of structural funding to the government, that's a different ball game, and I think I know what the answer would be from across the pond if we were to ask for that in those areas. What is possible though, and I've always encouraged it, and you do see it happening in football a lot, is to find organizations that are in that sport in the Netherlands. For example, from a national level, you have like the Dutch national rugby team, baseball, etc., and finding ways in which the partnerships can be established to boost the prominence of the sport here, the development of the sport, player development. You see that happening with basketball. The Nederlandse Basketball Bond also helps train referees, which, if anybody has ever been to games in the past of basketball, we needed it desperately. People has been calling fouls or not calling fouls when people are hanging out and they bleed to death, on the court. But so all of that capacity building is something that I think, I always encourage organizations to look for, whether in the region or whether across the Atlantic.
Absolutely. Now, Minister, before you leave, I have one more topic that I want to talk about away from the ministry. I want to talk about PFP as a whole. It's the party that many people say stood on the leg of accountability. And now you're seeing some critics are saying they're turning the wave now, saying they're turning the tide, I should say, and saying that, okay, well, the party that stood for accountability, now that they're in the hot seat, it seems like they're kind of straying away from it. You ask them questions. Some of them are not showing up to the press briefing. It's like a runaround. What do you have to say about that when you hear things like that?
So I've opted to engage with the public in my own way with a live stream, of course, every Tuesday. Mackey's Matters at 8:30 in the morning, and I've chosen to do that for personally professional reasons. I won't get into it here. The persons who I guess critique my participation in press briefing would probably be able to gauge between the lines why I don't show up. I think that public engagement needs to be something that is done with respect, and I'm not going to subject myself to disrespectful commentary and questions. So that's basically that. And I think that is also part of why we got here. Persons believing that you can address anybody, and it is whether it's my party or another party, we do hold ourselves accountable. I frequently say, you know, I didn't make this mess, but it is my responsibility to address it now because I'm here in the seat. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about how we got here. Because how we got here is 40 plus years of bad decisions, 40 plus years of politicking, or an attempt at politics, because it's very base, you know, and basic. And I think too, 40 plus years of people not wanting to just look in the mirror and say, we messed up. And I think, you know, especially when time comes to discuss publicly the results and the recommendations moving forward for the FBE review, many people will have to look in the mirror and admit their role in how we got here, whether they're in politics, whether they're in the media, because that's also part of it. Media not really asking critical questions, not going back and saying, but wait, this was something that was supposed to be done like this, but it was decided to do it like that. I think that too is a conversation that we have to have. And it's not going to be popular. Many of the things that this ministry will now have to do, that will probably be decisions I have to take, none of them are going to be popular. Many of them are going to alienate or at least tick off persons who have been coddled because they are a big voter base. And that's really what it is. I think Minvrami said it as well, that, you know, the threat of losing votes cannot continue to dictate how we run this country. And it has run this country for the last 50 years.
Absolutely. And now we're seeing
the chickens are coming home to roost.
Chickens, turkeys,
cows,
pigeons, everybody.
Out of the pasture, some ducks in the way, and some geese as well. So,
McDonald's.
A whole farm.
All right. But now quickly, you also made a comment about silos. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. What you actually meant as or
did people not have reading comprehension to understand?
You know, as Stuart Johnson once famously said, dumb it down.
Oh no, I would never. You know, I don't think it's a matter of dumbing it down, but you can simplify it. So one of the main complaints we always get is government works in silos, and at my ministry strategic planning session, that was one of the main themes that kept emerging as to why, you know, we have certain challenges in getting projects done and executing things, whether it's in one ministry or across ministries, right? And I said, you know, I talk a lot about, my father gonna say, loud, you sound like a broken record, coming from private sector. In private sector, it's the same. Sometimes you have, I've worked for a major hotel on the island, and I've worked for one of our major telecoms companies. And I think, you know, you and I, having worked at that same telecom company for our first summer job, saw firsthand how this one don't want to talk to that one.
Right.
And this one feel like I have my job to do, so I don't have to engage with whoever. And then it's just chaos. But ultimately, a company, a government, a sports organization, a culture organization, anything, it's a machine, right? Some cogs have to turn together. Some have to turn opposite way, but still together. And if they're not, then nothing is going to move forward.
Right.
But that is not a system that made that so. If a department head is not talking to a department head, that's a personal choice. The system didn't make it so. You did. And so that's what I meant when I said, you know, silos are not about the systems that you're in. It's about people. I think the best example is like an army, right? A military body. If you decide you don't want to talk to your squad leader or to the grunt that's at the opposite end of the management spectrum, somebody's gonna die. You know, and that's very extreme, but that's also something that I think it's a good example to kind of put that to the forefront. At a hotel, if front desk don't want to talk to sales, then how do we know what rooms we have available? How do we know what's in order? What's out of order? If housekeeping doesn't want to talk to anybody, then you, the guest, are gonna suffer. And that's my thing. Silos are created by people. It's a thing about characters and personalities, and that's fine, but ultimately we all have a job to do. And, you know, that's something that we also need to realize. When I was at UTS, you know, there are departments that rely on customer service, but if customer service doesn't know what the status of the field is, how are we supposed to get anything done? How are we supposed to address questions? There was a day we get a call, K-Hill ain't got no internet. Okay, maybe it's just that person, but then it turned out it was the whole of K-Hill. How would we know that if we didn't talk to operations? And so that, I think, is the point I was trying to make, that, you know, these are not created by systems or anything like that. They're created by people who want to behave as if they're in a silo, whether they're power hungry, I don't know how it goes, but ultimately it's about collaboration and cooperation, and I don't support silos in any event,
All right.
no matter where I am. So yeah.
There you go. Melissa Gumbs here with us, the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. Thank you for joining us today on the Super Duper
Thank you
Morning
for
Show.
having me. You're lucky you put all that line up because I wasn't coming.
Oh,
I wasn't coming.
yes, the lineup is out when it comes to Back It Out Sunday.
Yes, Back It Out Sunday.
So it is out. I'll talk about that in just a bit. But before you leave, remind the listeners out there every Tuesday they can tune into
Tuesday, yes. Mickey's
yeah?
Matters at 8:30 on my YouTube channel, my TikTok, online.
Yes, you could tune in, and if you missed it, even if you're part of the media, you could always go back and look at it.
As they do, I think, So yeah, shout out to the People's Tribune.
All right. Well, thank you again, Melissa, for joining us. Before you leave, the question of the day: besides Earth, what is your favorite planet in our solar system?
I'm very fascinated by Venus.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of sci-fi, a big fan of The Expanse, which is a great sci-fi series that was previously, it had a sci-fi channel in Amazon and Netflix and Amazon again. But I think it is actually one of the more scientifically accurate shows that has been out there, kind of like how Interstellar was like so wildly accurate from a scientific astronomical point of view. And how they represented Venus, I think it would be so interesting to just see, like, obviously not up close, but yeah, it is a planet that fascinates me. Then Mars after that. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you again, Melissa, for joining us, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say you with the Attitude Super Duper Morning Show birthdays coming up now.
Clap your hands.